One day I got a call saying I'd inherited something from a man I'd never met. A house, money, stocks. Sounds like luck, right? But when I started looking into it, I realized I hadn't just inherited something. I had inherited someone's secret. And this is what it was. I used to think my life was perfect. Not just good, perfect. I had built everything from the ground up. Came from nothing, worked my way through college, and by the time I hit 45, I was at the top of my game. Senior partner at a prestigious law firm, a sprawling house in an upscale neighborhood, a collection of vintage cars in my garage, and most importantly, a beautiful wife who, as far as I knew, adored me. Her name was Lauren. Tall, blonde, radiant. She was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and have every man's attention without even trying. But she wasn't just a trophy wife. She had a sharp wit, a degree in psychology, and a way of making people feel at ease. She knew how to work a room, how to charm clients at firm dinners, how to make herself invaluable. I thought we had a solid marriage. At least that's what I believed. Then, things started to change. It was subtle at first. The way she pulled away when I kissed her. The long stares at her phone. The sudden weekend girls' trips that had never been a thing before. The late-night showers when she came home after spending time with her friends. I wasn't stupid. I'd handled hundreds of divorce cases in my career. I knew the signs of a cheating spouse better than anyone. But I ignored them. I told myself I was overthinking it. That my mind was playing tricks on me because I had seen too many broken marriages firsthand. Denial is a funny thing. You can see the storm clouds gathering, but you still convince yourself it won't rain. Then one evening she hit me with the bombshell. We were sitting at our dining table, a bottle of wine between us. She had been distant all evening, barely touching her food, fidgeting with her wedding ring. Finally, she looked up at me, took a deep breath and said, "I have something to tell you." My stomach tightened. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. I should have been happy. I should have reached for her hand, kissed her, told her this was the best news of my life. But instead, I felt ice-cold dread creeping up my spine, because I knew, without a doubt, that the baby wasn't mine. Lauren and I hadn't been intimate in months. Not since before her sudden personality shift. Before she started coming home late. Before she began treating me like a stranger in my own house. She was watching me closely, waiting for my reaction. I forced a smile, nodding as if I was overwhelmed with joy. Inside, my mind was racing. If she thought she could drop this news on me and I'd accept it blindly, she was either delusional or thought I was a fool. I decided right then and there that I would find out the truth. Lauren had curled up in bed beside me, resting peacefully. Meanwhile, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. There was no way the child was mine. I wasn't going to let myself spiral into denial. I'd seen too many men in my line of work do that, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, the timing worked out. But the math didn't lie. The last time we had been intimate was nearly 6 months ago, and she had just now discovered she was pregnant? No, impossible. The next morning, I played the role of the doting husband. Kissed her on the cheek, told her how excited I was, asked about doctor's appointments. She beamed at me, acting like she had just given me the greatest gift of my life. It made my skin crawl. That day I made 2 phone calls. First, to a private investigator I knew well, Ben Callahan. He was an old-school PI, the kind of guy who still wore a trench coat like it was the 1950s, but he was damn good at his job. I had referred him to plenty of clients over the years, men and women alike who suspected their spouses were unfaithful. "You finally need my services, huh?" He chuckled when I told him I needed him to trail Lauren. "Damn shame. Thought you were one of the lucky ones." "Yeah, well," I muttered. "Looks like luck ran out." He didn't ask questions. Just said he'd start that night and get back to me when he had something. The second call was to my doctor. I wanted a full panel of tests, just in case. The results came back 3 days later. And that was when I realized just how deep her betrayal ran. I had tested positive for chlamydia. I stared at the results in my hands, my blood turning to ice. I hadn't been with anyone but Lauren in over a decade. If I had an STD, there was only one way I could have gotten it. I felt something snap inside me. Any lingering hope, any sliver of doubt that maybe I was wrong, disappeared in that moment. I wasn't going to just divorce her. That would be too easy. No, I was going to make her pay. That evening, Ben called me. "Got something for you," he said. "Your wife's got a pattern. There's a hotel downtown, the Hamilton. She checks in every Thursday night. Spends a couple of hours there. Leaves looking all dolled up. Same guy picks her up every time. I've got photos. Send me everything," I said. Already on it. Minutes later, my phone pinged. I opened the email and there she was, Lauren, walking into the hotel lobby, arm in arm with another man. Tall, dark-haired, well-dressed. The kind of guy who thought he was smooth. Her laughing, leaning into him. Her slipping into a hotel room with him. And then one image that made my blood run cold. A close-up of his face as he stepped out of the hotel later that night. I knew him. I knew him very well. It was Eric, my firm's junior partner, the man I had mentored, the man I had brought under my wing, introduced to my clients, helped climb the damn corporate ladder. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using me, both professionally and personally. Lauren had carried on an affair right under my nose with a man I had trusted. I had spent years outmaneuvering opponents in the courtroom, dissecting their every move before they even made it. That same skill, I was about to use it to destroy Lauren and Eric. But first, I needed to keep playing my role. The next morning, I kissed Lauren goodbye as she headed out for a prenatal yoga class. I watched her drive off, then got in my own car and went straight to my lawyer. Not just any lawyer, Mark Reynolds. The best divorce attorney in the state. Mark owed me a favor. A few years back, I had gotten his brother out of a legal mess that could have cost him his career. I had never cashed in on that favor until now. When I sat down in his office, I slid the file of evidence across his desk. "I want to bury her," I said, "and I don't want her to see it coming." Mark flipped through the photos and whistled. "Jesus, she really did you dirty." "She's pregnant," I said flatly, "and the kid isn't mine." That got his attention. His expression turned serious. "We can use that." I leaned forward. "I don't just want a divorce. I want the house, my assets, everything. I want her to walk away with nothing but regret." Mark nodded. "Then here's what we do." For the next 2 hours, we mapped out a strategy. I still had a firm to run, and Eric? He had no idea what was coming. That afternoon, I walked into the office like it was any other day. I passed Eric in the hallway. He grinned at me like nothing was wrong. "Morning, boss," he said. I forced a smile. "Morning. Hey, got a minute? I need to talk to you about something." He followed me into my office. I gestured for him to sit. "Big case coming up," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I want you to take lead on it." "Seriously?" "Oh yeah," I said. "You've been killing it lately. I think you're ready." I watched his ego inflate right in front of me. He had no clue he was walking straight into my trap. Eric didn't know was that I had been keeping a file on him for years. Small things at first, missed deadlines, questionable expense reports, sloppy work I had covered up. Things that weren't big enough to get him fired alone, but when stacked together, enough to bury his career. By the end of the week, I'd fed him enough rope to hang himself. He had no idea that every document he signed, every email he sent was being scrutinized. I walked into the managing partners meeting on Friday morning, dropped the file onto the table and said, "We have a problem, and his name is Eric." By the end of the day, Eric was out. No severance, no glowing recommendation, just a ruined reputation and a box of his things as security escorted him out of the building. The night Eric got fired, Lauren came home in a mood. She barely looked at me, her usual fake affection replaced by something else. Irritation. I could already guess why. She didn't know I had orchestrated Eric's downfall, but she did know that her little plaything was suddenly unemployed. She poured herself a glass of wine, pregnancy be damned, and sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, probably texting Eric, trying to comfort him. I kept my expression neutral, played dumb. "Rough day." "Yeah, just stressful." "Anything I can do?" That was the beauty of it. I wanted her to believe I was still the clueless, devoted husband. I wanted her to feel safe, because once she did, that was when I'd twist the knife. The next morning, I had another meeting with Mark. I want to time this perfectly. I want to hit her with the divorce when she's at her weakest. Good news on that front. We pulled financial records. She's been siphoning money from your accounts. That part didn't surprise me. Lauren had access to our joint accounts, and while I made more than enough to cover any expenses, I had noticed odd withdrawals over the past year. Now I had confirmation. She had been stealing from me. Mark handed me a document. We'll use this in court. Prove financial misconduct. She won't see a dime. That night, while Lauren was in the shower, I picked up her phone. I'd long since memorized her passcode. It was our anniversary date. Ironically, I went straight to her messages. And there it was. Proof. Texts from Eric. Eric, baby, I don't know what to do. He fired me. I don't even know if I can get another job in this city. Lauren, calm down. We'll figure something out. Eric, did you tell him? About us? About the baby? Lauren, no, not yet. I need him to think everything is normal. That was all I needed. I took screenshots, emailed them to myself. Then I did something extra. I sent the screenshots to Eric's fiancée. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention? Eric was engaged. The next day, while Lauren was out for one of her spa days, I set everything into motion. I had all the locks changed, security system updated, bank accounts frozen. Then I called her parents. See, Lauren had always kept up this perfect daughter act. Her family was old money, conservative, deeply concerned with appearances. The kind of people who would never tolerate a scandal. I sent them the same evidence I had given my lawyer. Proof of her affair, proof that she had stolen money from me, proof that the child she was carrying wasn't mine. Then I sent her a text. We need to talk. Come home. An hour later, she walked through the front door. And that's when she saw it, her suitcases packed and sitting by the door. The locks changed. The expression on my face that told her everything was about to come crashing down. She looked at me, eyes narrowing. What's going on? I didn't say a word. Just handed her a thick envelope. She opened it. There was divorce papers. Evidence of her affair. Bank statements proving she had stolen from me. And, just for good measure, a printed copy of the STD results I had gotten back. The one proving she had infected me. Her face went from confusion to horror. How did you? I know everything, Lauren, I said, my voice calm. I know about Eric. I know the baby isn't mine. I know you've been stealing from me. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. And now? So do your parents. She let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she gripped the papers. You wouldn't. Already did. I gestured toward her phone. Might want to check your messages. I had sent the evidence to every single person in her life who mattered, her family, her friends, even a few of her colleagues at the boutique agency where she worked. She looked up at me, tears brimming in her eyes. Please, we can fix this. Oh, now you want to fix things? I made a mistake. Yeah, a lot of them. Then, before she could respond, I opened the front door. Get out. Her eyes widened. You. I already filed the paperwork. I cut her off. You're getting nothing. No house, no money, no sympathy. I paused, then added, I hope Eric was worth it. And with that, I turned my back on her. Lauren didn't leave right away. She stood there, gripping the divorce papers, her breathing shallow and erratic. Her perfect little world, the one she had built on lies, was collapsing around her, and she was scrambling to hold on to anything she could. Please, don't do this. This conversation is over, I said. Get out. She didn't move. Then her phone buzzed. I watched her glance at the screen, and just like that, the last bit of color drained from her face. I already knew what she was seeing, because I had made sure Eric's fiancée got the truth. And judging by the look on Lauren's face, Eric had just found out about it, too. Her hands trembled as she typed furiously. I leaned against the doorframe, watching. A minute later, she let out a choked gasp. No! I smirked. Something wrong. She looked up at me, tears brimming in her eyes. Eric, he blocked me. Oh, that's interesting, I said. You torched your marriage, got your little boy toy fired, and now? By the way, I said, stepping closer, lowering my voice, you might want to get yourself checked. Turns out you gave me something extra along with the betrayal. Her breath hitched. What? I pulled my STD test results from my pocket and tossed them onto the counter. I got tested. Guess what came back positive? Lauren grabbed the paper with shaking hands. Her eyes darted over the results, her face twisting into something between horror and realization. You might want to give Eric a call, I said with a smirk. Oh wait, never mind. He blocked you. For a split second, I thought she was going to lunge at me. Instead, she grabbed her suitcase, stormed to the door, and yanked it open. But just as she stepped out, she turned back. You're a monster, she spat. You set me up. I raised an eyebrow. No, Lauren. You did this to yourself. And with that, I shut the door in her face. Lauren's downfall wasn't instant, but it was thorough. I had cut off all her financial resources. The house, the credit cards, the bank accounts, all gone. She had no legal standing to fight for anything because I had the proof of her financial misconduct. Her parents, they were furious. Not just at her, but at the sheer humiliation. They weren't the type to forgive scandal, and when I told them she had stolen from me, they practically disowned her. Eric, his life was in flames, too. His fiancée dumped him loudly. She made a scene at his apartment, throwing his clothes out onto the street. Last I heard, he had moved to another city, desperately trying to salvage his career. And Lauren? She tried to fight the divorce, tried to play the victim, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The judge ruled in my favor. She walked away with nothing. No money, no house, no reputation. I thought that was the end of it. But a month later I got an email from Lauren, and what I read changed everything. A month had passed since I threw Lauren out of my house and out of my life. I thought I was done with her. Then she sent the email. It landed in my inbox late at night. The subject line was simple. You need to know the truth. I almost deleted it without reading, but something, curiosity maybe, made me open it. Her message was short. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I hurt you more than I can ever fix. But there's something you don't know. Something I need to tell you. Please, meet me. Just once. After that, I'll leave you alone forever. We met at a small cafe, far from our old neighborhood. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the back. She looked rough. Dark circles under her eyes, hair dull, skin pale. She wasn't the same woman who had once been so effortlessly radiant. I didn't sit, just crossed my arms and stared down at her. Say what you need to say. She took a deep breath. I lied to you, I scoffed. Yeah, Lauren. No kidding. She shook her head. Not about the affair. About the baby. That caught me off guard. What are you talking about? She hesitated, gripping the edge of the table. The baby is yours. Silence. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. No, I said automatically. That's impossible. She swallowed hard. I did the math wrong. I was scared, confused. When I got pregnant, I just assumed it had to be Eric's because of, well, everything. She looked away. But I got a paternity test after you threw me out. The baby's yours. Everything I had believed for the past month, everything I had acted on was based on a lie. I had destroyed her, cut her off from everything. And now she was sitting in front of me carrying my child. I exhaled slowly, trying to stay in control. Why should I believe you? Lauren reached into her purse, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and slid it across the table. A DNA test. I opened it. My name. 99.99% probability of paternity. My heart pounded in my chest. I had been so sure I was doing the right thing, that I was avenging myself against a woman who had betrayed me. And now I had a child on the way. What do you want from me? She shook her head quickly. Nothing. I swear, I don't expect anything from you. I just thought you deserved to know. I stared at her, trying to process everything. She had ruined my life. She had cheated, lied, stolen from me. She had destroyed everything we had built. But that child was innocent. I stood up, I'll be involved, I said. But not for you. For the baby. A tear slipped down her cheek. But I didn't care. Lauren had lost me forever. But I wasn't going to let my child suffer for her sins. As I walked out of the cafe, one thought echoed in my mind. Revenge had felt good. Damn good. But fate had just played the ultimate trick on me. The DNA test sat on the passenger seat, mocking me. I had won. I had torn Lauren's life apart, humiliated her, made sure she had nothing left. And now I was the father of a child I never expected to have. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my office, drinking whiskey, staring at the test results. I thought about ignoring it, pretending I never saw the email, letting Lauren figure it out on her own. But no matter how much I hated her, I couldn't do that. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about my kid. The next morning I called my lawyer, Mark. I need to make a custody plan, I told him. He sighed. This about the baby? I ran a hand through my hair. Yeah. Mark was quiet for a moment. You sure it's yours? I saw the test results myself. Damn. Another pause. Well, legally speaking, you have every right to fight for full custody, given her history. Infidelity, financial misconduct. It's not a good look for her. I knew what he was implying. If I wanted to, I could take the baby from Lauren. But was that the right move? I didn't answer right away. Let me think about it. Because for the first time since this whole thing started, I wasn't sure what I wanted. A week later, Lauren called me. She sounded different, defeated, hollow. I need to talk to you, she said. I met her at a park, neutral ground. She looked even worse than before. The pregnancy was taking a toll on her, and without her usual wealth and comfort, she wasn't the same woman. She sat on a bench, her hands cradling her stomach. When she looked up at me, her eyes were full of something I hadn't seen before. I know I can't fix what I did, she said quietly. I destroyed us. I know that. I didn't say anything. She took a deep breath. But I don't want our child to suffer because of my mistakes. For the first time, she wasn't trying to manipulate me. She wasn't playing the victim. She was just being honest. And I had to admit a part of me respected that. I sat down beside her. Not close. But not as distant as before. We'll work something out, I said. She let out a shaky breath, nodding. Thank you. We sat there in silence for a while. Two broken people tied together forever by something bigger than our mistakes. I didn't forgive her. I never would. But for the sake of my child, I would make sure we never made them suffer for what we had done. Lauren and I barely spoke outside of necessary discussions about the pregnancy. She had moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, far from the luxury she had once flaunted. She was still working at the boutique agency, but without my financial safety net, she was struggling. But despite my lingering anger, I stayed involved. I went to doctor's appointments. I made sure my name was on every legal document regarding the baby. I had my lawyer draft a custody agreement before the child was even born. I wasn't going to let Lauren pull anything when it came to my kid. The call came in the middle of the night. Lauren was in labor. I almost didn't go. Almost let my resentment keep me away. But then I reminded myself this wasn't about her. So I went. She was already in the hospital bed when I arrived, her face contorted in pain. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. I took a deep breath and walked to the other side of the room. Hours passed. Screams, doctors, nurses coming and going. I stood there, watching it all unfold, feeling more like a spectator than a participant. And then, a baby's cry filled the room. My chest tightened as I watched the doctor lift a tiny, wriggling human into the air. I barely heard anything else. It's a boy, someone said. A son. My son. Something in me shifted in that moment. The anger, the revenge, the betrayal, none of it mattered when I looked at him for the first time. Lauren was crying, but I barely noticed. All I could see was him. I reached out and for the first time I held my child. He was small, warm, fragile. And in that moment I knew whatever happened I would protect him. Not for Lauren. Not for myself. For him. Lauren and I didn't suddenly become friends. There was no miraculous moment of reconciliation. But things changed. I hired a nanny, my choice, not Lauren's. I set up a trust fund for my son, making sure Lauren couldn't touch a dime. I made it clear that I would never be manipulated again. She didn't argue. I think, in her own way, she finally understood what she had lost. One day, when my son was a few months old, Lauren looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Do you still hate me?" "No," I said. "I don't hate you anymore." Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. My son grew, and with him so did my sense of purpose. Lauren and I settled into a rhythm. It wasn't friendship, but it wasn't war either. It was something in between, a necessary truce for the sake of our child. I had full legal custody, but I didn't keep my son from her. I wasn't that kind of man. She got visitation, and to her credit, she never missed a single one. But the life she had imagined for herself, the cushy, glamorous existence built on my success, was gone forever. She never begged for another chance. Never asked to come back. Maybe she finally understood there was no fixing what she had destroyed. One afternoon, when my son was about a year old, I took him to the park. It was a simple thing. The kind of thing fathers do all the time. I was pushing him on the swings when I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me." I turned around. She was standing there, a woman I had never seen before. Dark hair, warm eyes, a kind smile. She was holding a little girl's hand. I nodded. "Yeah?" She smiled, glancing at my son. "Sorry, I think our kids have been making faces at each other for the past 5 minutes." I looked down at my son, who was giggling. The little girl beside her was doing the same. For the first time in a long time, I laughed. The woman held out her hand. "I'm Claire." For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Lauren. Claire and I started talking that day at the park. Nothing serious, just two parents laughing as our kids played. But there was something there. Something real. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to know someone again. I didn't rush it. I wasn't that man anymore. The one who believed in fairy tales and perfect marriages. But I also wasn't the man who let bitterness consume him. I had found balance. A year later, I got an unexpected message from Lauren. "Can we meet? One last time." I agreed. Not because I wanted closure, I had already found that. But because something in me wanted to see what she had become. We met at the same cafe where she had once dropped the truth about our son. She looked different. Not worse. Just different. Older. Wiser. Tired, but not broken. She offered me a small smile. "I heard you're seeing someone." I nodded. "Yeah, Claire." She stirred her coffee, exhaling slowly. "I'm happy for you." I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't sure if it was true or if it even mattered. She looked up at me, her eyes softer than they had been in years. I never apologized. I didn't say anything. She swallowed hard. "I know it doesn't change anything. But I need you to know I regret everything. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I did to you." I nodded, letting her words settle. I didn't need an apology. I had already moved on. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote this for our son. For when he's older." I took it, hesitating for only a second. "I don't expect anything from you," she said. "I just hope someday he'll understand that I love him." I looked at her, really looked at her. She was no longer the woman I had once loved. But she also wasn't the woman I had hated. She was just a person, living with the consequences of her choices. And that was enough for me. I stood up. "Goodbye, Lauren." She smiled sadly. "Goodbye. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. If you liked the story, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm show my content more often. If you are new to the channel, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep making more stories for you.